Let's do it, baby. Okay, so here today we have my good friend over here, Raghu. I'm very excited about this. I mean, this is like a real opportunity. It's not every single day that you get to interview and speak with a founder that took a company in a very short time span, in 4 years, from beginning, launching from a 100 square meter office all the way to an exit of 200 million. And it's not somebody that I get to hear. We have my good friend. And I'm very excited to him to share his experience. So everyone, please welcome Raghu. And Raghu, thank you so much for doing this. This is a real opportunity. And, so take us through from the beginning, Raghu. Like, where you from? Start all the way from the beginning. Like, where were you born? Which city are you from?
Hey, first of all, thanks, FM, for providing me an opportunity to share our story. So we had an exciting journey. I think probably you'll probably get the journey out of us in the course of this interaction. So I am born in Bangalore, brought up in Bangalore, and primarily studied in India throughout actually. So I'm an engineer, computer science engineer. Then worked with Texas Instruments for a couple of years. Then did my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, one of the most premier B schools in the country. Right. Post that, I used to work as a consultant. Quit that and started Taxiforsure, which is essentially a company in the ride-hailing space. Loosely put, you could call us as the Uber of India. Right. So that's essentially. So the family background is come from a typical middle class background, where I think in India at least education is given a significant importance. And thankfully, touch wood, I was academically sound. So because of which I grew up in an environment where I had some amazing folks as batchmates and colleagues and friends, right? And I think that makes all the difference, I guess.
Wow. So like you mentioned, like you come from like a middle class background. So I'm assuming, and from my understanding about the Indians in general, is they're very conservative and they're very secure oriented. They're not very, they're not jumping to take risk and start a business. They're looking for stability, right? So so your parents, for example, did they like instill in you some type of like, go out there and do whatever you can, like some entrepreneurship drive? What was like the upbringing? How did they instill that in you, or did you not have that, or did you get it? How'd you get it?
Oh, so that I think at least during the times at which when we started, I think 2010, right? At least in the families that I grew up in, or the families that I interacted with, or the part of India that I come from, being an entrepreneur was as close as to be unemployed. Right. So I don't think so. Parents essentially parents focus on your education so that you study well and you end up on a good job with the Wipro, Infosys, the Google, Facebooks, Microsoft of the world, than essentially quitting whatever you have got and starting something completely new and afresh, and that too in a taxi space. Right. And that's something that I don't think so any parents wants their kids to really go through that. Right. So from that perspective, I don't think so they were open for me to take that leap of faith and take that risk.
So you did it. I mean, you went ahead and did it. So let's start with Taxiforsure. Let's jump into that because
just to take a step back. Right. So the way me and my co-founder, the way we essentially answered that question, right? So should we even take a risk and stuff like that? And mind you, this is 2010, where the tech startup ecosystem was extremely at a very nascent stage, and there were no exits. Right, and the people didn't really know that you can build a startup from scratch and get a good exit and probably make lots of money, employ a lot of people and stuff like that. So there was no precedence as such. All right. So even and because we studied in some great colleges and stuff like that, and the kind of compensation that we used to get, salaries that we used to get in our previous jobs were pretty sound. So if you have to quit that, we wanted to essentially have a plan in place. Right. So the way we rationalized ourselves was we wanted to give ourselves 2 years. Right. So post engineering, we worked with a couple of years. Then we did our MBA, which is essentially a 2-year course. Right. So we gave ourselves the same 2 years. Right. So we'll try this over 2 years, and if things are working out, we'll continue. If things are not working out, we'll go back to our jobs. Right. And when we had to go talk to the families, we essentially so we were 28, 30 years old then when we started. So we told our families that, see, we're going to work for the next 30 years. All right. And 2 years out of those 30 years is not going to be a big thing. Right? Just give us these 2 years. If not now, it will be much difficult later, because once you have family, once you have kids and stuff like that, only the responsibilities only keeps on increasing. So we'll never be able to do that. And this is the right time. So I was married, my co-founder wasn't married, and I didn't have any kids. So we thought that probably this is the best 2 years that we need to do. And thankfully, we had a great idea. We believe that we had a great idea. So because of which we thought, okay, let's give ourselves those 2 years out of the next 35 years that we are going to work, and see how things would really go. Right. And yeah, so the 2 years went really well, and because of which I'm talking to you today. So that's how we rationalized it.
Wow. I mean, it's also like a great way to approach it, you know, in the sense that, like, in the bigger scheme of things, like in life, you know, 2 years out of 35 years is essentially nothing, you know.
Exactly.
And to go ahead, and because you were young, I mean, you were married then, your co-founder wasn't, but you obviously had a bigger risk in the sense that you had to provide for your wife. But like, if you approach it like that, to take it as a 2-year commitment in that sense, and if it doesn't work out, obviously you can move on because you had a degree and you can get a job and have stability. That's just like a great way to approach it. Very interesting. You know, it's really interesting. I like that.
There is another interesting thing. Is that since I was married, that was essentially a boon, not a bane, because my wife was working.
Okay.
So she ensured that she would ensure that I would never sleep hungry. And so from India, she moved to Singapore, and she started earning in dollars so that she can invest in the company as well.
Oh, was she support? I mean, how was she when you told her you had this crazy idea that you drew? That I heard you got it. You came up with the idea over drinks and you wrote it on a napkin. You know, how was she like? How did she take it?
So I think so the journey there is interesting till we arrive at that particular point. So once we got the idea, it's not that we got completely excited. Right, and there are again multiple reasons to that, because we were not the smartest or the best students in the class, right? Because we studied in some great institutes, right? We were not the best, or we're not the smartest. So we always wondered, how can we, who are not probably the smartest guys in the class, can get an idea where the smartest people in the class are not able to get it. All right, we can't really think that we can't be overconfident that we got smart. We essentially pulled a fast one on those guys, right? So we're not necessarily confident. So what we did was, and I think probably because of my consultancy background, right, we wanted to be sure of what problem are we trying to solve. Right? Is the taxi hailing problem only restricted to people like us who are consultants or who are business development guys or probably B school graduates, or is it a wide phenomenon? So what we did was we did an online survey. Right, and we shared with most of our friends, right, and because given that majority of our friends had similar background, everyone said yes, they also face a problem whenever they want to find a cab anywhere. So then we thought probably it might be skewed towards all these B school graduates. So then we thought, okay, let's go to the airports and speak to people over there. Right, we went to the airport, stood in front of the airport, and we started speaking to people who are coming in and getting out of the airport. They also said the same thing, that they also face a problem whenever they try to book a cab. Then we thought probably this problem must be skewed towards frequent flyers. That may not be a big market. So by this time, we had a good questionnaire of around 15 questions, 10 objective and 5 explanation-oriented questions. And we had a bunch of college kids, asked them to stand in front of shopping malls and speak to people over there, right? We garnered around 3,000 odd responses, right? And 92% of the people that we had spoken to told that they face a problem, right? Out of which a few people had taken time to think about answering those 5 explanation questions, right? So we met those people in person and showed them that this is the problem, right? And we have this kind of a solution. Will you use this solution? When we saw that each and every one of them fell in love with the solution, that's when we realized that, okay, we have something interesting. Post that only we quit our jobs, because we had done so much of research and we had gone so deep into the problem, right? So when we started speaking to my wife, we were able to convince. So the same logic, right? So give us 2 years. So we'll see where it goes. And she gave us 2 years, right? And that's essentially how it really worked out. It's just that I think our fundamentals were extremely strong because we had gone and spoken to customers, the current customers, potential customers, and stuff like that. Gone.
I think it's incredible. I mean, a few things you point on. And the first thing I think is amazing that you did the validation before you even built the product. right? Like as if a lot of companies will go ahead and build a product and then try to do product market fit and everything like that, and try to, either they have to pivot towards a customer or they have to figure something else out.
See, I think they were extremely lucky. You know why? Because we had great jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We were not the guys who had quit our jobs and we are trying to figure out what to do. Because we were working and we had great jobs, right? So quitting that was always a challenge, right? You don't want to quit a job that you like and which pays you really well, right? If you have to quit that, you need to be extremely sure of what you're trying to get into, right? And thankfully, because we were in that position, we had to do all this research. That's one. The second thing is because, as I told you, right, we studied with some of the smartest people that I know, right? So these people were extremely skeptical, cynical. All right. So whenever we went and spoke to our friends and told them that this is what I'm planning to do, so people used to say that, okay, any travel aggregator will do, or the existing taxi companies will eat you up. How are you going to address this problem? Why will the why will the customer trust you? What if you are not able to provide a cab within the first 5 minutes? What kind of brand will you build? How do you ensure quality of service from people, from taxi drivers? They don't listen to anybody, right? Because those guys asked these tough questions, and because those questions were extremely valid, we went ahead and tried to find answers to those questions. Because we had these amazing skeptical, cynical friends, right? None of our investors asked questions to an extent where ask cynical and skeptical question friends asked. So because of which we were able to answer every single question that the investors put across extremely confidently, because we had gone to the market and essentially figured out what the right answers were. So I'm extremely thankful that we had such kind of friends, right? Who essentially pushed us so much that none of the investors pushed us as much as our friends did. So extremely lucky that ways.
Yeah. So from like when your friends started pushing you and you did the whole product validation by getting the surveys, how long afterwards did you actually launch Taxiforsure?
So it took us, so once we quit our jobs, post this validation, it took us around 8 months.
8 months.
8 months. So I'll tell you why that happened. Primarily because we are from a good premier institute. So we reached out to some of our alums who also knew all these investors, right? All the VCs in India, right? So and he introduced us to all these VCs. So we had just a deck. We had zero product, right? And we got introduced to the venture capitalist, right? The VC firms. So we thought, okay, we got introduced, so let's go meet. So we went and met them. So they're like, oh, this is an amazing idea. This is great, right? Okay, let's see what the progress is. So by the time we kept on meeting, without really working on product. Right. So we got introduced to around 10 VCs and we were essentially going around all these 10 VCs. So thereby we lost 10 months. Lost around 6 months by interacting with VCs because we didn't have any time to work on the product just because we got introduced. Right. And over a period of time, and also the mistake that we did was we always thought that this is an amazing technical product, right? And we were B school grads, right? Working in consulting firms. So we always thought that some of these VCs would know amazing tech guys, right? And if we share our idea completely, probably they will figure out that we are not probably the best suited guys to do this idea. So they might ask some of those great engineering guys whom they know to do this. So when we interact, even though we started interacting with those VCs, we never shared the complete idea because we thought that the idea is the IP.
Right.
All right. And I mean, we were so naive then. We never shared the complete idea because of which people really couldn't understand what is that we are trying to do, which is completely different. Because we were never willing to share that because we thought that they have access to better people who can do this better than us. Right. So because of it, things didn't really go anywhere. So just went in circles, and so usually people don't say no on your face. At least in India, culturally, right? They don't say no on your face. So because of it, they're like, "Oh, this is interesting. This sounds exciting. Let's catch up next month." So we go next month without any much work. So after 6 months, we decided that so this is not going anywhere. Let's stop interacting with the VCs. Let's focus on building the product. So we built the product, got some initial traction, and then went ahead and built the entire product. After that, we went back to the VCs.
Mm-hmm. And how much money did you raise the first time?
Oh, sorry, I didn't get you.
How much money did you raise the first time?
I think there is an issue.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah. So I think so. We were looking at raising 100K.
Okay.
Right. And what we got was $1 million.
That's pretty good for going for 100K.
No, not necessarily. Just that multiple VCs were interested in investing in us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we wanted to get the two guys on board. One is Axel Partners, another is Helion. Axel, because Axel was invested in Flipkart, which was an operationally excellent company during that time, right? We wanted to understand how Flipkart runs operations and leverage that expertise in the way we run our operations. That's one. And second was Helion. Helion was an investor in Make My Trip, which is essentially a flight ticket booking platform, and Redbus, which is essentially a bus ticket booking platform. So the customers were similar, travel customers, right? We wanted to leverage how to access those customers, right? Because those people, Make My Trip and Redbus, had essentially cracked it. So we wanted access to those companies, and we thought that the best way to do it is to essentially have a common investor. So we wanted to get both Axel and Helion. So because we wanted to get both of them, so their minimum investment in any company was 500K. Right? Even though we wanted only 100K, so it's just that because their minimum investment was 500K, because they don't do seed, so they do only Series A. At least then, 2010, the Series A was $1 million in India, right? So both of them had to put 500K each, and we were able to raise 1 million. Yeah.
So like until you actually raise that money, did you still have like doubts in your mind or fear like is this actually going to go somewhere? Could it actually work? I mean, once you raise $1 million, especially in India, that gives you some type of real solid foundation. That gives you a lot of validation in the sense that you actually are onto something over here. Or so until you raise that, did you have what type of fears were you going through in the sense like could it work? Am I we gaining traction enough? You know?
So we never asked those questions because we had done that research and stuff like that, right? So we knew that there is a burning problem and we have a great solution. We just have to essentially ensure that the people get to see the solution that we have built. Mm-hmm. And essentially address those things in place. So we were at it. So there was no doubt that this would not really work as such. But I think the challenge was after that's why we were speaking to Axel Helion. And one such meeting where we wanted to just go and update them on what has been the progress, we went ahead and updated them. And the same meeting they gave us a term sheet. We never expected a term sheet. Right? We were looking at raising 100K and we were never not expecting a term sheet. They gave us a term sheet with $1 million. And we were like, okay, so what should we say? We don't know. We never expected that. And that happened. So, but the thing was the same night was the challenge for us. Mm-hmm. Right? So me and my co-founder were kind of depressed. Right? We got a term sheet for $1 million. And we knew that, we are going to work that way. But that was the same night where both me and my co-founder were depressed. Primarily because we always knew at the back of our mind that if Taxiforsure wouldn't have worked, we could go back to our jobs. All right. And now with this $1 million, we're going to essentially get some of the people, right, who join the company just because they believe in us. And those people may or may not necessarily have the same kind of opportunities that we have. Right. So if somebody else is teaching their career and their life to us, then we need to essentially ensure that failure is not an option. Right? We really have it in us to essentially build this company and run our seed through. Because till then it was okay, it was fine, because we always knew that there was this exit option, there is this ladder, right? There is this rope, always there was this lifeline, right? And because of this $1 million, then probably we need to let go of that lifeline. If not for us, for at least for other people, we need to let it go. And that was a challenge. And I think that was the night when we essentially grew into men from the mere boys who were trying to do something. Right, and after that, since that day, I think we never looked at failure as an option. So failure can never be an option. So that's essentially how we went and did that.
You just plowed. Wow, that's incredible. It came from a different perspective too. It's like you're looking. It wasn't about, obviously you had the product validation, and now you had the money. And it wasn't about you thought about your first people you thought about were your employees. That really you're actually responsible for someone now. You're responsible for your employees because they won't have the opportunity. If this were fail, they won't have the same opportunities as you. The way you approach it, it's incredible. Right. So you started in 2010 when, that's when Uber just got into India. Ola just started getting started.
Uber got into India in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. It was 2012 is when Uber got into India. Uber started in August 2010 in US. And I think they were looking at only black cars. They're not in that segment also. right? Uber got into India in 2012.
So
It was not.
started, I guess, in 2010. So that you were the first to market, in you and Ola, I guess, right?
Yes, yes. We all started almost more or less together.
What's the other? So how would you like? You already had, you already have like a differentiation, or how are you going to be different, or how was the competition in the beginning part?
So we were too small actually. So we were in Bangalore.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you so well.
We were in Bangalore. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Bangalore. Ola was in Mumbai.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So two different cities. Essentially, let's say Ola was in New York and we were in SF.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. And you don't even get to know what's really happening in New York or what's really happening in SF. So we didn't know that each other existed till the VC started speaking to both of us.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's when we realized that, oh, there is this competition in Mumbai because we were more interested in figuring out how to crack Bangalore. And they were more interested in figuring out how to crack Mumbai. Right. So our paths never crossed.
Really?
Right. At least then we just wanted to figure out, at least at that stage, those stages, right? We were more interested in figuring out the product market fit
Mm-hmm.
than essentially start competing. Right. So both of us were trying to figure out what is the right product market fit for the businesses, and I think we were more busy with that than figuring out on the competition piece. And we never had we had not heard of Uber, at least in 2010, 2011, right? So the coverage of tech startups in US was not so wide and as prevalent as it is today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Uber was not really in that mass segment because they were in the Uber Black kind of segment, right? So people were not aware of them. So even we were not aware of them at all.
Right.
So over a period of time, after the VCs put in the money, I think over the next 6 to 9 months is when we figured out that there is this company called Uber who was focusing on Uber Black, and they were just entering into the Uber X model.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Wow, so that's interesting. You're essentially like the Uber of, I mean, technically Uber of India. You're like, you even came up with this idea. Now every startup is like the Uber of X, the Uber of like, of whatever you could think of, the Uber of X. You were essentially one of the founders of this whole concept,
I don't know. As I mentioned to you, right? Because of our background and stuff like that, the problems that we are facing, that's how we came across this idea. Than essentially trying to figure out that we want to build a startup and what is the next big thing and stuff like that. It's not about that because we as individuals were facing the problem, and we thought we had a good solution. So that's essentially how it happened. But in retrospectively, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense what you said. But when we started thinking on those lines and things like that, we never thought that this is going to be the next big thing. The entire sharing economy will be driven by this. We never thought on those lines.
Wow. So let's change the direction a little bit and let's go. You were a first-time founder. And you had a major success for the first-time founder. So and obviously, you were a consultant beforehand, but you didn't have, what type of qualities did you have as you became the CEO of your company and as you grew your company from one stage to another stage? How did you adapt and how did you grow? How did you learn as a first-time founder?
So I think made a lot of mistakes actually.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot from making those mistakes. All right. I think because we're first time founders and there is nobody in the ecosystem to tell us that this is the way to go about building a business. So we try to build a business the way we thought is fit. At least because we had VCs on the board and stuff like that. At least the board is to give us some direction to run towards to. But while running in that direction, we used to essentially fall flat multiple times, get up and essentially do that. All right. And always there was a huge challenge, huge challenge. We were growing extremely rapidly, right? And a kind of growth that we had no control over. Right? Because when the cab drivers saw more business because they were associated with us, more and more number of cab drivers used to come be part of us. And when the customers started seeing that there is so much of availability on Taxiforsure platform, more number of customers used to come to us. Right, so it became essentially a self-sustaining ecosystem only. Drivers are coming, customers are coming. Drivers are coming, customers are coming. Right, so we had to essentially ensure that the platform is stable enough to handle all that. Right, so that's essentially how it was. So what we realized was the company was growing fast, right? And if we have to really keep a control over how the company is really growing, right, the direction in which it's running and stuff like that, right? We had to figure out a way to grow faster than the company. Right? The simple rule that I followed then was, see, I know how to ride a two-wheeler. Right? It's very easy for me to ride a two-wheeler at, let's say, 40 miles per hour or 50 miles per hour. Right? I have complete control over that vehicle. But once I essentially cross over that 70 miles per hour or 80 miles per hour on the two-wheeler, right, the vehicle starts wobbling.
Right.
Right. But I know that there are people who ride a two-wheeler at 150 miles per hour and 180 miles per hour also. Right? How are they able to do it, and why am I struggling at 70 to 80? It's just that they have been trained, they have practiced, right? They have learned new ways of handling the bike, right? So then I have to start investing in myself. So the way I started investing in myself was to speak to other entrepreneurs, speak to the Flipkart founders, speak to the Myntra founders, speak to the Redbus founders, speak to some of the VC who were ex-entrepreneurs who became VCs later, right? Start speaking to a lot of people, right? And be extremely open towards feedback from the board, from peers, from employees, right? So that all of them are trying to help you, right? As long as you essentially try to behave like a sponge, and as long as you recognize the need for investing in yourself, right? So once you essentially consciously start making an effort, then it's just a matter of time that they will start probably growing much, much faster than the company, all right? Because of which you can still manage and hold on to the rate at which the company can essentially do. So those were the things. But uh, point blank, I think it is mistakes. The more mistakes I made, the faster I learned. The lesser mistakes I made, I wouldn't learn much because I was getting things right the first time. I wouldn't really know whether it is the right way to do it or wrong way to do it. But once I start making mistakes, I know that what I should not be doing, right? And that essentially teaches you a lot more.
Yeah, correct. I think this equation: pain plus learning equals growth.
Yes.
That's the way to do it. So you touched on an important thing over there in the sense that you were very open to, I guess, effective communication and real transparency in receiving real feedback on your weaknesses and your strengths. And that's the way you grew. Was that, in essence, was that also the culture you tried to instill in Taxiforsure?
Oh, that's true. That's true. All right. So we are extremely open, extremely transparent, extremely approachable. All right. And the one thing that we essentially did that was everyone had access to data.
All data.
Even everything, all data of the customers, the drivers. All right. So the number of transactions that we were doing and stuff like that. All right. So why that was important was because we wanted to remove the subjectivity in the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted people to be objective. All right. And we wanted to remove designations in a meeting room. In a brainstorming sessions, we wanted to remove designations. Right. So if you're going to talk about guts, right? My gut says that we should be doing this and stuff like that, right? Then the CEO's gut overrules everybody. If you bring in data, then there is no CEO, right? You have a point, you back it up with data, right? Then everyone listens. But if you're going to talk about gut, then the CEO's gut overrules everybody's, right? Because of which things were so transparent, so I think so disagreements were extremely common, right? Because it was all on data, completely based on data, right? And any decisions was also very easy to push because it was backed by data.
That's
Right.
incredible.
So things became so everyone. So it was mandatory for everyone to learn SQL, whether you come from an engineering background or you don't come from an engineering background, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Everyone had to learn SQL. So there was a 3-day training for everyone, every new joinee, irrespective of the level at which they join, to know how to write SQL queries. Because the database was open, people could write their SQL queries, figure out the data, and essentially do that. Because if someone gets so see, the thing is, once the company starts growing, we essentially start start moving away from whatever that is really happening at the ground level. All right, but the real learning, the real insights are at the ground level. Right. So for that to really come across, right, you need to make that thing open and transparent. Right. It's very easy to make the decision flow. That decision flow essentially goes from the top to the bottom. Information doesn't come through. Right. So then you need, if you have all these things, right, where the destination doesn't really matter if somebody gets the data, then it's complete transparent. And that when that becomes a part of the culture of the company, every new person who's going to join the company, the first thing that we're going to look at is how to get data, and we're going to train them on how to retrieve the data. So everyone is independent, everyone is well equipped, so and people know what is the way in which the things are done in the company. So it was essentially a great thing to
Wow.
really have that.
So you didn't really have like there's a book that just came out recently called Principles by Ray Dalio. He's a founder of a company called Bridgewater, and he talked
Yes.
about the concept very similar to what you're saying of called idea meritocracy, in the sense that there's no hierarchy. The CEO is not calling the shots. Everything's based off the data. You know, it's a very similar concept, and it's interesting that you've been doing this for. I mean, you ran your company like that, in the sense that it wasn't you. Yes, I'm Raghu, I'm the CEO, and this is what we're going to do. And if someone argued with you, it's my way. It's the way to effectively run a company is essentially like what you just said, in the sense that yes, we need to have this type of disagreement between Raghu and the employee in order to come to the true facts of the solution we're trying to provide, which a lot of it is based off the data. And it's interesting. And another thing you mentioned over here, which I think is fascinating, is the sense that you said that everything was open, everything was open. And I think a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs would not do that, because they'll be fearful in case let's say one employee didn't get along very well, or if something happened, they would take with them everything they're able to get, and and leave with it. But if you're able to create an effective company culture like you did in Taxiforsure, I guess you didn't essentially have to have this constant worry on your head if someone, God forbid, will take all the data with them and all that.
So we used to have that, right? So a lot of every new individual who used to join senior management, right? That's the first thing that they used to disagree with us, right? Why are you taking it and go? And what if people take it and go? So we were like, that's okay, right? We are 2,000 odd people strong, right? I'm not saying that there are no bad apples. That's okay. But just because this one or two people are going to probably misuse the data, we just can't make the rest of the 1,900 odd employees suffer because of not having access to data. Right? Or what about the amazing insight that we are going to get, which is going to probably make our business only, just because we are afraid of some of those guys. Okay, let's say we understand your concern. If those people take it and go, let's say between Uber and Lyft, how many drivers are common between Uber and Lyft? At least during those early stages, how many customers were common between Uber and Lyft?
Mm-hmm.
All right, probably we share the same customer database. Probably we share the same similar data driver database also, right? There is no significant competitive advantage. But we accessing the same customers, accessing the same set of drivers, what is the kind of business that we can go to that we're going to build is the one which is going to make the entire difference. Not necessarily data can never be a competitive advantage. What do we do with that data should be our competitive advantage.
Right.
Right, and that's essentially how we went about doing it.
Wow, that's interesting. What else did you have part of your culture in Taxiforsure?
That's a very extremely broad question. See,
what were the values or the principles that the company stood for?
Right. See, we essentially ran it as more like what do you say? So the culture was essentially the way we behaved, right? Because we used to work in some corporates and then we started the company. We always felt that the monotony in a corporate life is essentially extremely boring. And whenever we used to chat when we were working, it was always about how I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing day after day, and it's so boring. It's not at all exciting and stuff like that, right? But you just don't get to do different things every day in a corporate life. But when we essentially looked inwards, right? So during our childhood days, we used to play a game called cricket. I'm not sure whether you're aware of cricket.
Sure.
Cricket is loosely put like baseball. So we used to play cricket for years together with the same set of people, right? With the same set of rules on the same ground for years together. Not even a single day we were bored, right? So if we have to play the same game with the same set of people on the same ground with the same set of rules and for years together, and not even a single day we were good, if we're not bored. So what is that helped us not to be bored then? Can we essentially replicate the same thing here? And that's essentially what we did. All right. So we just dug deep into ourselves. What are the places which essentially got the best out of us? What are the places which got the worst out of us? Right? What got us excited to wake up in the morning and do things? We just replicate the same thing in the company. So that because the culture of the company is nothing but the extension of the founders. how the founders are, how the founders think, how the founders behave. It's very difficult to essentially keep the culture and the behavior of the founders apart, right? You just can't read up on Netflix's culture doc and get something which is inspiring, but you're not necessarily that. It's very difficult to sustain that, right? If the culture is just an extension of who the founders are, how they are, and stuff like that, right? It's so easy, and it so resonates. You put that up on the slide, and the founders are just behaving like that. People just take it at face value,
Right. Right.
right? You put up something on the slide, but you behave differently, then there are a lot of conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, stuff like that is what we have done. So we say open and transparent, approachable. None of the senior management had cubicles. We used to sit with rest of the people, and sometimes I wouldn't really have a place to sit only.
Mm.
All right, we just used to hang out, and we used to have dinners with lunches with all the people, irrespective of who they are, what they are, and stuff like that. And we used to essentially get have those informal conversations with people across the football table, across water dispensers, coffee machine, right? Informal conversation, so that apart from the topic that gets discussed, because you're having that meal together. So once you're done with the topic of discussion, you start chatting about something else. And either you get to understand the person a lot better than what you understood, right? Or you get to know about some things that probably which doesn't really come through the formal discussion mode. So all those tiny bits has essentially helped the company significantly. I can't really say that there is this big thing that we did which essentially transformed the company. No, there are all these tiny bits, right? Even though they're not effort intensive, that doesn't cost money, right? That doesn't cost resources and stuff like that, right? Those tiny bits is the one which has made a huge difference to the company than one single thing that essentially transformed the company.
Mm-hmm. One interesting thing I came across also is the fact that you try to include the employees' spouses also, that or a significant other, to involve them in the company too. Similar, like and your
Yeah, that's
wife.
true. That's true. So because I would realize that my wife used to say that I'm not spending time,
Okay.
right? And whenever, so one is I won't go home, all right? And whenever I go home, also I would be preoccupied. They would be talking. I would be worrying about some problems in the company,
Right.
right? And they say, why do you even come home? All right, why do you even come home if you going to behave like that? So after some time, I realized that so if my wife might think that way, probably the spouses of my other employees also would probably be thinking that way.
Right.
Right, but everyone feels that they are the victim. All right, so then we thought that, but the thing is, they need to understand what is that we do. The spouses usually don't understand what is that we do. So
Right.
because of which they essentially look at it from a extremely narrow lens. All right, so that's when we started essentially getting the spouses also involved. All right, in terms of we would either do a movie and dinner, or a lunch and a movie, so that people get to spend time with us. So whenever the spouses used to come, the spouses used to talk about how bad their spouse is and how much of time they're spending at office. At home also, they take calls at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning and things like that. And the other person, exactly, my husband also does the same thing, or my wife also does the same thing. And once they figured out that they were not alone, there are other people also that who are also feeling the same way. I don't know, for whatever reason, they felt relieved. Right, they felt relieved, and because of those discussions, stuff like that, right? People realize that okay, what we're trying to do, right? Why they have to do those 2 a.m., 3 a.m. calls, and how important it is, and stuff like that, right? So next time, earlier, whenever someone would get a call at 2 a.m. in the morning, right, the wife would probably put the phone on silent. Right. Now she would like wake up and dude, there is a call at 2 a.m. in the morning. Probably the servers are not are probably crying about not firing up. I think you should take this call. Wake up and take it. How much will you sleep? Right. So getting that spouses, the rest of the family involved made a huge difference. So because they also started being participating, they also started relating to what the company was doing.
Right.
And why whatever we were doing was so important, and why it was so time critical, and why it makes sense to spend so much of time. And they weren't alone, because they started discussing it with the other spouses and stuff like that also, and they only started encouraging their spouses to do that. And once you essentially get that because people always have this thing that okay, they need to go talk to their spouse, they need to spend time with the spouse and stuff like that, right? But once that stress was removed, right, people could achieve a lot more in the same amount of time that they were trying to do, because that mental stress was removed.
Yeah.
right? So it was not that we planned it that way, but it's just that I realized that if my wife can feel that way, and I thought that probably other spouses also could feel the same way. So the way I wanted to really help my wife, so I thought probably I should figure out a way to help the other spouses also. And we just brought them together and essentially made them a stakeholder in the company, understand what is that we are doing this. And thankfully those people are extremely open, right? They wanted to understand. They were extremely reasonable and rational. They figured out what is the cause that we were going after and why was it so important for us and for their spouses also. And they responded significantly well.
Wow, that's just so amazing. In my next company I'm going to found, I'm definitely going to implement that. I think there's no other way about it, you know? Especially if the other half understands the cause what you're working for and the bigger picture, they want to get part of it too. So essentially, you're running two companies now. You know, you have the regular company, and you have a company of all the spouses. They, essentially doing their own thing too. So I know
Exactly.
just to show like another thing, like which Taxiforsure, I guess, and not just Taxiforsure, but the founders, you and your partner, how you guys stood apart is that when you guys were looking at the acquisition part, towards the end, I remember Uber came to you guys, and Uber was interested in acquiring you first before Ola. And one of the reasons, from my understanding, was the reason why you turned down Uber was in essence that they would not take on your employees, the whole Taxiforsure group, and they wouldn't give, many other things. But then one of the things was the fact that you wanted to make sure that your employees first had stability and had a job in Uber before you even start discussions, like serious discussions with them to sell. Was that how it went down? Like, would you elaborate on that?
So exactly right. So see, the thing is, Uber essentially, at least then, the decision making in Uber was centralized, which was in SF, right? And the Indian operations runs a lot differently than probably the rest of the world operations, right? And that's the reason Amazon is still behind Flipkart and Uber is still behind Ola, right? So we understood the how to run the Indian operations, right? And we were doing it really well, right? When we spoke to Uber, also we wanted to essentially communicate the same thing, but it's just that they were focused on continuing the way they do operations in US and replicating the same thing in India, right? So there was a mismatch, and we told that we need all these people, but they didn't want the entire team. They just wanted to pick and choose whatever they felt that was relevant, right? We told them that this thing is not going to help you, all right? But with Ola, we were able to, because they understood, they were also fellow Indians. They also understood how to run the business and stuff like that. So there was essential, and they knew what difference that we were making to the market. All right, and they realized that all the difference we were able to do it is because of the team that we had.
Right.
All right, so they wanted to ensure that everyone had wanted to be. They wanted everyone in the team.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then we thought, so here are these partners who understand the business the same way as we do, and who essentially respect and appreciate the work that we have done so far, right? And they want to augment than eliminate. All right, and these are probably the more relevant partners for us than this. But as you said rightly, the biggest thing for us to go towards Ola than Uber, even though we had a term sheet from Uber, which was at a higher valuation than what Ola had offered us, is primarily because we wanted all our stakeholders, right, be it our employees, be it our driver partners, right, to essentially not to be left high and dry because of the deal that we are going to. So probably we would have ended up making more money than what we did with the Ola deal, but that wouldn't be right. So we wanted to ensure that everyone has a safe haven, at least for some time, so that they can figure out what to do next in their lives. So that's the reason we went with Ola than with the Uber.
Right. Wow. There's a lot of questions I have regarding that whole phase, and I guess we'll put it off for a different time. But let's go on the next thing in the sense that so when you got the term sheet that your company's being bought for $200 million, what was like the first thing that came to your mind? What was like the whole thought process? Like, you built this thing out of 100 square foot office, and I'm going to go, and I know that you went, when you were signing the contract, you went back to that office to sign the contract in your original office, right?
Yes.
But what was the thought process? Like, you took 4 years of your life, you start off, you and your co-founder, and you built this into this gigantic corporate company, a massive extended family of all your employees. Everyone's heavily invested in it. And all of a sudden, you're selling your company you get this term sheet and you're selling it. What was going through your mind? What were you feeling? Yeah,
So I think it's a tough thing to really describe. See, we never started Taxiforsure to sell.
okay. Mm-hmm.
All right, that was never part of the thing. But it so just so happened that we got into a situation where we had to sell. All right. So, but so till that time, so whatever we would think, what the company would do, were always in sync, right? But at the time of acquisition is when that started diverging.
Okay.
Like what we wanted for ourselves and what the company should be doing started was different, and that was emotionally uh, painful, extremely painful. Right. So, but we had to deal with it because, and we didn't really have too much of time to essentially mull over that. So probably 1 or 2 days we went through that emotional turmoil. But after that, we had to essentially pull ourselves together and figure out what is the best. So we got into the situation that where we didn't want to be for whatever reason. But then we had to figure out what is the best outcome from the situation that we are in. Right? That's essentially how we went about looking at this. So when we essentially got the term sheet for 200 million, 200 million was just a number. We were not too much hung up on the 200 million. So what we wanted to really do what would really happen to our the rest of the stakeholders, our investors, our employees, our customers, our driver partners. What would really happen to them, and how do we ensure that the transition is as smooth as possible, so that even we don't really lose out, and even the new guys, Ola guys who are essentially acquired us also would probably not essentially get a white elephant,
Right.
so that they would essentially get messed up. So we wanted to really figure out how do we ensure that the transaction is as smooth as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the transition is also as smooth as possible. Right? That's something that we used to worry about. And once all those things were in place, is when we had to really sign. And that day was bad. that day was. I mean, you just can't let go of some things that you spent the entire last 4 years thinking about. I mean, when you go to bed, you're thinking about the company. When you wake up, you are thinking about the company, right? And and the company is your identity, right? There is no whatever the past that you had before the company started, that didn't really matter, right? And the future is completely unknown. So you are the company. The company is you. Right. So both of them used to go hand in hand, and that was the day where we had to part ways. Right. So essentially, someone is plucking the identity out of you,
Okay.
and that's hard. And the best place was I wouldn't really I didn't know whether I'll be able to get back to the same old office from where we started, the 100 square feet office space that we started. So I think probably if at all we need to do justice to circle of life, we need to probably go back to from where it all began. And essentially that's where we signed those papers, and yeah, so we completed that circle over there, and yeah, the rest is history.
Wow. I can only imagine, like, it's such a difficult thing, like you said, your startup, your startup, the company is your identity, and it's also like your baby. You see it going through for all the phases, from being born, to being a little child, and to being an infant, a child, and, going through all the phases. And all of a sudden, like, you built it, your blood, sweat, tears, days, nights, and also you have to depart with it. You know, that's probably the hardest thing out of anything is, the hardest thing. Like, you have to depart with something that you literally is who you are, and that's the same thing you went through with Taxiforsure, like you just explained, that you had to depart with your identity and, like, literally start over, like. So how was it, like, I guess the next day, like, what new skills did you learn in life did you have to learn? Like, beforehand in Taxiforsure, you probably had an assistant booking all your flights, taking care of everything for you. Now all of a sudden, like, you wake up one day, you're back home in bed, and you have nowhere to go. There's no work to go to. How did this new transition go?
So so the new transition was at least initially I had no clue what needs to be done. At least I had this 2.5-year-old son of mine, so I started spending time. But from the completely hectic days to days when you have so much of time, right, and you essentially don't know what to do, right? I spent some time talking to startups, trying to figure out what to do next and things like that. But over a period of time, I realized that, right. So I pushed myself significantly during Taxiforsure days. And I think being part of an entrepreneur, I mean, apart from the money, the fame, and everything that you essentially make out of it at the end of the day, right? I think the biggest benefit of being an entrepreneur is you discover something about yourself. It's a path of self-discovery than anything else. I never, based on my academics, based on the skill set that I thought I had, right? I never, and being and becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a founder of a company would essentially pushes you out of your comfort zone, right? And because you're pushed out of your comfort zone, you do things that you never thought was that you could have done, right? And you realize that you are probably much more better suited for those things than what you have been trained for, right? And you feel good about yourself. There are times when when I felt extremely proud about myself. I never thought that I was probably fit for such kind of roles or such kind of things. I never thought that I can lead people. I never thought that I can inspire people. I never thought that I can sell anything to anyone. But I had to sell Taxiforsure to investors, to future employees, to driver partners, to customers, to vendors, and stuff like that. And I really loved that part of it. Right. And because of which, when I exited, I didn't know what to do next. And I figured out, okay, what is that I need to do to push myself? Right. So that's when I used to run marathons during the Taxiforsure journey and stuff like that. So I wanted to figure out what is the next thing that I can push. Then I figured out that there is something called an Ironman, which is a triathlon.
Sure.
All right. And triathlon, and I thought that it's probably the best place to start, because I think triathlons are those places where your bank balance doesn't matter, right? Your education degrees don't matter, right? Your network doesn't matter. What really matters is what are you built of, right? On that particular day, do you have it in you or not? So that's the reason I chose triathlons. And the thing was, I didn't know how to swim, right? I had to learn how to swim, and I started learning swimming, and I started competing in triathlons. And I've done 3 half Ironman and 1 full Ironman. So
Wow.
I feel good. I feel good about all those things myself. So I get to learn a lot of new things. I get to learn new skills. Now I get to interact with a lot of startups. And given that, so I made good money because of my exit with Taxiforsure. So I get to invest in startups as well. Now, so when we started Taxiforsure, whole lot of people helped us for us to get wherever we got to. And I just can't go back and help them out. The only thing that I can do it is to pay it forward. So help other entrepreneurs. At least ensure that they don't really make the same mistakes that we did, right? But at least help them make newer mistakes so that they learn. And essentially try to help them out in building probably a much more successful, probably a much better company than what we built at Taxi for sure, right? And that's essentially what keeps me busy, keeps me excited, and keeps me checking along.
Wow. That's just incredible. So essentially, so now you're just doing full-time angel investing. And I guess,
Yeah, I do angel investments. I sit on the board of few companies and help out entrepreneurs.
right. So what do you see the startup world, the startup ecosystem in India going towards? How does it, you guys obviously had an extraordinary story in the fact that you had an exit. A lot of Indian startups don't have an exit. So that's one thing that's amazing. The second thing is, where do you see that the startup culture in India is just starting to pick up? It's relatively new. It's 5-6 years old, and it's continuing to grow and grow by leaps and bounds. More companies are coming out of there. More people are getting involved. There's more types of incubators. So where do you see it going down the line?
So I think we are in that early stages of the boom in the startup ecosystem in India. I'm not talking about a boom of a particular vertical and stuff like that. It's just that the outlook towards people, towards startups, has changed significantly. So more number of people want to now start companies. A great bunch of people want to work in startups. But the biggest and the foremost thing is consumers want to try out startups.
Mm-hmm.
So that used to be a huge challenge because there's significant amount of brand loyalty in India. All right, for a startup to essentially break through that was extremely challenging. But now that even the customer mindset has changed significantly, that okay, not all startups are bad,
Right.
right? Not all startups probably struggle with service delivery, right? That's changed, and now even the government is stepping in, right? So they have a government, a startup dedicated fund. So most of the policies, regulations governing startups are relaxed significantly, right? And there are a lot of old school, old economy businessmen wants to invest in startups, right? So there are a lot of incubators, a lot of hardware incubators, accelerators, right? So all this essentially is bringing the entire ecosystem together, right? And given that India is such an amazing, large open market, I think we are the biggest or largest open market in the world today, right? Because of which more and more number of international investors, international startups, international companies are getting into the Indian ecosystem, and they are trying to leverage, right? And anyone who is here can essentially get leverage the expertise, the innovation in the different parts of the world, and essentially start building something in India, right? And because we have some amazing education institutes and stuff like that, right? And all those people also currently have got up startup programs. They have their own incubators, their own accelerators and stuff like that. Even people who are just passing out of colleges or who are still in college are innovating. Right? Earlier, this was frowned upon. No, people are looking forward to amazing stuff coming out of these campuses, right? So that there's a huge shift in the mindset, and that's phenomenal. But again, as I said, right, it's still early days. It's still early days. So if you're essentially talking about a married couple, right, one person ensures that they work with the likes of the Google, the Facebooks, the Walmarts, or the Wipro, Infosys, TCS of the world, so that there is stability at home, and the other spouse essentially works in a startup, right? We currently haven't really got to a stage where both the people in our relationship are working in startups. So still in a nascent stage, because it's still considered as risky, which is it is, right? So and people are the ESOP, people making some crazy amounts of money through ESOP has just started happening, right? So it's not just only the founders who are going to make crazy amounts of money. Even ESOP holders can also make some great loads of money. That is something that is really happening thanks to the recent Flipkart deal. I think Flipkart spanned out multiple millionaires, right, who are employees. And so those things are essentially helping the ecosystem, right? So now I think it's just a matter of time you're going to see probably the Facebooks or the WhatsApp of the world coming out of India, right? Because people are innovating. In India, people are extremely creative, extremely innovative. It's just a matter of time that the world will essentially see what Indians are capable of.
Right. I think
go on.
One interesting thing you mentioned is that before this whole startup thing, in India, that it grew, companies that in India that were being built in India were for being built in India, but they're being servicing outside of India, right? So United States, Europe, or anywhere else. The new whole startup boom in India is the fact that they're building companies for India. They're building startups for India, not building for outside of India, which is phenomenal, I think, which is really, that's where I think it's heading in the future, which is really incredible.
That's true.
So let me see, who's your favorite entrepreneur? Your all-time favorite entrepreneur who you look up to?
So that's there are multiple people actually, right? So when we are really looking at people who essentially have understood the growing the startup and stuff like that, I think it's Ben Horowitz.
Great.
Right. I think he has summarized in his book Hard Thing About Hard Things, right? That's an amazing book.
Yeah, I think I've read it 3 times already.
Yeah. So I mean, when you read that, right, you essentially, I mean, irrespective of the stage at which the startup is in, right, everyone has something to take away from that, right? And that's amazing, right? But so Ben Horowitz stands over there, right? And when you're talking about taking a large company, changing the way, pivoting a startup and stuff like that, right? I think Andy Grove of Intel, he's an amazing guy. I mean, the kind of books or the way they articulate their thought process is amazing. And if you were in that kind of position, right, you can so well relate to it. Okay. And you essentially start figuring out, okay, so what is that I need to be doing? All right, those are the people who would essentially, as if they're standing next to you and essentially trying to tell you that how to think through things, and that's amazing. But when it comes to taking some bold bets, some riskier things, or probably looking at some moonshot ideas, I think that would be Elon Musk.
Right.
I think no one does better than him when it comes to moonshot ideas. Right. That's amazing. And sometimes in a startup, while running a startup, you need to be ruthless. Right. And I think no better person than Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very difficult to essentially get this single person who is essentially an amalgamation of everything that you think the world is. but in different aspects, right? You would look up to some certain people because we are not satisfied trying to be the next Bezos or the next Musk or the next Ben Horowitz. What you really want to do is to essentially want to look at someone who is amazing in that particular area. All right, you essentially start learning from that person, right? All right, those are heroes, but no one is perfect.
Correct.
All right, so if your entire goal is to be so and so, right, and usually what so happens is we'll always fall short. Right, but you essentially want to essentially get the best out of multiple people and try to amalgamate that with your own identity. Then you are a different individual. Then probably other people want to be like you than trying to be the so and so. So it's a combination of multiple people than essentially a single individual. I don't know whether I made sense, but yeah,
that made total sense. I mean, obviously, it made sense because first of all, each individual issue you had, like you had an individual leader that you looked up to for that individual issue. And also in the sense that, it's not about becoming that, the Jeff Bezos, it's about becoming becoming your best self for yourself, how you could grow and learn from that. That's what it's about. So you mentioned you mentioned Ben Horowitz's books, the book, Hard Things About Hard Things. I think it's a phenomenal book. I read it 3 times already. What other books do you recommend to read?
Oh, Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Okay.
Oh, that's amazing. That essentially keeps on reminding you that you need to keep pushing yourself. When everybody around you loses their mind, you need to keep mind on your own shoulders and essentially go about whatever you think it is. Just because other people don't agree doesn't mean that it is the wrong thing to be done, right? And every time I keep reading that, I think it's essentially has a completely different meaning. All right. Then there is George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Okay.
Right, and that's again essentially because when you become an entrepreneur, no one is going to support you.
Right.
Right, everyone has their own way of looking at things and stuff like that. Animal Farm is an amazing example of how people could be completely wrong. Right, so there and I think Ayn Rand Fountainhead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing that way. Apart from that, I think there are quite a few startup related books. Right, lean design thinking.
Right.
Right, so those are pretty good. But I think I use Ben Horowitz as more as a Bible than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely identify with that. It's a great book. And the way I like the way also how essentially you don't have to read the whole entire book. You can open it up and reference each individual part, because that's the way he set it up, which is amazing. So outside of startups, what else? What other passions you have? What drives you? So we know you love to do Ironmans and marathons. You love to give back. So what else? Keeps you going? What keeps you? What drives you?
Oh, so I just want to be better than what I was yesterday. Right. So essentially, you just keep pushing yourself just to do that. And what drives me is I don't want to be in my comfort zone. Right, comforting is great. It's encouraging. It's doing, but that doesn't essentially satisfy my hunger. Right. So my hunger, and my curiosity are the ones which essentially defines me. So always cherish and nourish that. So, and I keep essentially dabbling with multiple things. Right. Be it sports, be it extracurriculars, be it completely different kinds of startups. And some of the startups that I currently explore are in a space that I have absolutely no idea about. Right, and I just can't hold a conversation for even 5 to 10 minutes also. But I'm so excited about all these things because I feel that if at all anybody else can disrupt it, I think it's me because I don't understand it. So I ask all the fundamental and basic questions, and I essentially stuff like that is what keeps me driven, keeps me motivated to essentially pick up something and do that. And I think the best thing that has really happened to me for me is I've got amazing friends. Right, and I keep having those brainstorming sessions, conversations with this bunch of people, and so every day it's something new, right? Every conversation I have something, and for me to essentially push my thoughts, push my boundaries, push my limits, right? So these conversations helps a whole lot. All right, and touch wood, I'm grateful that I have such amazing friends.
Right. Wow. That's incredible. I think that's the most important thing. Obviously your friends, your family, and two things that everyone needs, and two things you have to literally invest in, like a startup, and work on it and constantly grow it and everything. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you, and someone wanted to pick your brain, or someone wanted to pitch you a startup, or someone wanted your advice, how do they get a hold of you? What's available? What channels do you use?
So the best thing for all these things is LinkedIn. I'm not really a social media person.
Okay.
All right. And so I'm not much of a Facebook or a Twitter kind of a guy. The best way to reach out to me is through my LinkedIn. Right. And I usually check my LinkedIn quite often, right? Multiple times a week. So a very high probability that I would respond to people on that.
Wow. Perfect. Perfect. Now I know you're a busy man. You got a lot to do, so we're gonna wrap this up. Raghu, there's no way I could thank you. This has been absolutely amazing, extremely informative. I've learned a tremendous amount. I definitely know there's going to be a round 2 of this, because there's so much more questions I have, so many more things that I could learn from you. Especially how I personally could challenge myself more and how to overcome obstacles, and always never stay in your comfort zone and always look for more things. You're an inspiration. You're a real leader. You have a lot to give over, and with the way the startups are going forward in India, there's no doubt in my mind, if you're at the head of it, it's going in the right direction. You're going to take it to some places. It's going to be amazing. There's no doubt.
Thank you, man. You've been extremely kind with your words, right? And happy to have a chat with you again. But this was a lovely conversation, right? And I think also I have it probably in me, but it all depends on the kind of questions that the person asks. And you've been phenomenal at it, I think. And the amount of background work that you have done about me, about the work that I've done, is amazing, right? And some of the questions essentially got me thinking. Right. I mean, hats off to you. Hats off to all the homework that you have done and the absolutely amazing questions, which essentially got some of the great answers from me. Right. I think thanks to you, all your effort, and happy to be here one more time also.
Sure, I definitely would love to have you. And also, I'm waiting for you in America. Whenever you come to America, you should know that you have a house that you can stay in. You can come, your family. I live in New York, so come, bring your whole family. You're definitely welcome to stay here. I'll show you the city, the Big Apple, and you'll have a great time here.
Nothing, man. We'll do that.
Forever,
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
Speak to you.
Yeah.